Today we will present to your attention new evidence of the existence of life after the death of the physical body. After all, each of us has thought about it at least once, and this has been the case throughout human history. What awaits the deceased after the funeral rite is performed, conducted according to religious or secular conventions. After the untimely death of a loved one, even the most convinced skeptic hopes that death has taken away only a mortal body, and the spirit is able to wait out the right time and be reborn again in a different guise. This belief in the rebirth of the soul is inherent in many religions, and each has its own name. But the international word for the hope of returning to life is the Latin word reincarnation. The exact translation is rebirth. Such faith helps to survive difficult moments. Most people are convinced that doctors are convinced materialists who do not believe in anything supernatural, especially in the idea of living beyond the threshold of death. But today we will tell you about 3 doctors from different countries who personally encountered the unknown and did not dismiss it. Peter Fenwick. Peter was born in 1935 into a family of immigrants from Great Britain who settled in the African Republic of Kenya. His father was a large farmer and had coffee plantations, and his mother was a certified surgeon who came to the country to work under the auspices of the Red Cross. After graduating from a local college, young Fenwick went to England and enrolled in the Faculty of Natural Sciences at Cambridge. Peter chose medicine as his specialty. After graduating, he began internships in the fields of neurophysiology and neuropsychiatry. After completing his residency at St. Thomas's Hospital in London, Fenwick began teaching at King's College while also working as a consultant in difficult cases. His services were used not only by various psychiatric clinics in the UK, including the Broadmoor Hospital in Crowthorne, where criminals who were recognized as insane were treated, but also by the Japanese Institute of Neuroscience. The study of the human nervous system in general and the effect of brain lesions on mental state in particular has confronted Dr. Fenwick with a vast unknown field of psychological problems. Although at first he preferred to ignore his own observations, trying to write off all the mysterious incidents as an accident. The turning point came when Peter got his hands on the book Life After Life by psychiatrist Raymond Moody. The materials and observations collected in it made it possible to explain the strange stories that happened to Fenwick himself and his patients. Since the mid-80s, Peter began to keep his own records. The first recorded case was when a man approached Dr. Fenwick, who was concerned about his mental health. He said that he had recently experienced clinical death as a result of cardiac arrest, and since then he has been haunted by memories of what he saw beyond the threshold of life. He allegedly watched everything happening in the intensive care unit from somewhere above, saw his body and the actions of the doctors. Then he was caught up in a stream of bright white light, in which he floated easily and freely. But the moving light closed in a ring, and the spirit of the deceased fell down, returning to the abandoned body. The man feared that his mind was damaged as a result of resuscitation. He refused to talk about this experience with his family and friends. He was terrified of ending up in a psychiatric hospital. Today, almost everyone has heard about near-death experiences, but at that time there was no such information in the public domain. With great difficulty, Fenwick managed to convince the patient that his memories corresponded to the descriptions he had received from other people and recommended reading Dr. Moody's book. Each recorded case has its own details, but most of the evidence can be grouped according to the following criteria. A person understands that he has died, but continues to see and understand what is happening around his body. Moreover, many people note that they experienced a special clarity of mind at that time. Peace comes, pain goes away. The deceased finds himself in a space filled with love and happiness. The descriptions include deceased relatives and friends, but some people note that higher beings came out of the bright light to them, who communicated with them through telepathy. The well-known expression, "life flashed before my eyes," perfectly describes the visual experiences of the patient. It helped many of those who returned to their bodies to rethink their own lives. Various religious beliefs or atheism leave their mark on people's perception of what they have experienced beyond the threshold of death. but almost everyone knows a positive experience that allowed them to relate to the moment of death in a new way, without fear. Everyone is convinced that beyond the last threshold, they will be greeted by a new life filled with light and warmth. Fenwick's notes contain not only the stories of people who personally experienced clinical death, but also unique testimonies from loved ones who were present at the death of a sick person. Many people note that with the last breath, a foggy clot or a dim light appears above the body of the deceased, which moves upward. Sometimes a seriously ill person anticipates his own death, begins to talk to long-dead relatives, and can name the exact date of his departure. Fenwick believes that at the moment of death, a person's soul does not remain alone. It is met by someone who will lead it into a new life. In collaboration with his wife Elizabeth, the doctor published the book, The Art of Dying, in which he spoke about his accumulated experience in researching the near-death moment. He founded the Horizon Research Foundation, which is engaged in scientific substantiation of the phenomenon of death. Peter died in 2024, having lived 89 years. His students and followers hope that Fenwick now knows exactly what happens to a person after death. It was my turn to meet an American psychiatrist, whose books forced many doctors to reconsider their beliefs about near-death experiences. Raymond Moody. Raymond was born in 1944 in the tiny central Georgia town of Porterdale. His father was a local doctor, whose life creed was agnosticism. Moody Sr. was a staunch skeptic and irritated the local religious community with assurances that he would believe in higher powers only if he got to know them personally. Unsurprisingly, young Raymond also shared his views. After graduating from a local college, the young man went to the University of Virginia, where he received bachelor's and master's degrees in philosophy. But later, the young philosopher was attracted to medicine, in particular psychiatry. After graduation, Moody became a certified doctor, worked as a forensic psychiatrist in Georgia, and then was appointed head of the department at the University of Nevada. During his residency in Virginia, there was a significant meeting that turned the young man's mind upside down. One of the seminars was led by an outstanding psychiatrist, Professor George Ritchie. He told the audience about his own near-death experiences at the time of clinical death. For 9 long minutes, Ritchie's spirit traveled around the world, visited different cities in America, and communicated with higher light beings. Shocked, Moody decides to devote his life to researching such cases. The work began with the collection of information. Raymond talked to people who had experienced clinical death, systematized their stories. These materials became the basis for the book, Life After Life, which had a huge impact on many people who became Moody's students and followers. The book contains near-death memories of almost 1,000 real patients. Like his spiritual mentor Ritchie, Moody experienced clinical death himself. It happened in 1991. He tried to commit suicide. The reason for this decision was an undiagnosed thyroid disease, which disrupted the activity of the nervous system. His own visions at the time of near-death experiences are included in the new book, The Paranormal. Moody saw from above the medics resuscitating his body, felt peace and quiet, flew through a tunnel of light. The psychiatrist has learned from his own experience that physical death is just a door into the unknown. In addition to describing near-death experiences, Moody is also interested in other aspects of the afterlife. Memories of past lives, transmigration of souls, meetings in the other world. Let's talk about this in more detail. Regression or hypnotic memories of previous lives can help patients with mental disorders. The doctor is sure that hypnosis reveals the dependence of today's problems on the actions committed in previous lives. Moody himself has been repeatedly subjected to hypnotic regression and is sure that he is now living his 10th life. Leading questions from a specialist hypnologist will allow everyone to rethink what they have lived before. The method, according to the psychiatrist, is extremely useful and allows you to cure a variety of phobias, anxiety, insomnia, and obsessive thoughts. Reincarnation, or the transmigration of a human soul into a new body after death, is the basis of many religious and philosophical doctrines. Moody believes that working on the study of reincarnation phenomena will help open the door to the mysterious abode of death. He personally interviewed patients who, after experiencing clinical death, could recall many moments of their past incarnations. Their memories are documented in archival data. In almost every near-death memory, people talk about encounters that happened to them in the afterlife. Most of them see their relatives and friends. Believers of various faiths can meet and talk with the supreme embodiment of his religion. But many people recall the appearance of higher light entities. They are called in different ways: teacher, mentor, master. But everyone agrees on one thing. It is their words that make them rethink life and live the rest of their days with bright thoughts and good deeds. Moody works hard to understand and alleviate the suffering of people who have lost loved ones. Taking the ancient Greek psychomantiums, rooms for communicating with the dead, as a model, he proposed something similar to cure grief for the deceased. Staying awake alone in a small room with dim lighting helps to comprehend the loss and come to terms with it, which means coping with grief and moving on. The psychiatrist coined the term shared experience of death. It was Moody who first documented the stories of people who were present at the death of loved ones. Some saw the ghosts of the long dead who came to this world to meet a new soul. Others watched pictures of his life with the dying man. Unreal light, a feeling of love and forgiveness are often described. If there was a close spiritual connection between people during their lifetime, then the moment of one's transition to the afterlife can be felt by another at a great distance. Moody described all these moments in the book Reflections of Eternity. Getting to know her will help calm sensitive souls who are afraid of death. We will all be welcomed on the threshold of a new life. The doctor is sure of this and is trying to convey this truth to his readers. Today, Raymond Moody lives with his third wife, Cheryl, and 2 adopted children in Alabama. Old age does not allow for frequent meetings with fans, but the famous psychiatrist is working on new books dedicated to life beyond death. Our next hero is a Dutch cardiologist who has conducted his own research in the field of near-death experiences, Pim van Lommel. Pim was born in Laren, a small town in northern Holland, in 1943. After graduating from high school, Pim becomes a student at the medical faculty of the University of Utrecht. The young man chose cardiology as his specialty, and after receiving his diploma, conducted an appointment at the Arnhem City Hospital for 26 years. Even during his work, Pim began collecting information about near-death experiences in cardiac patients at 10 major hospitals in the Netherlands. He personally interviewed about 400 people who had experienced clinical death. The results of the research appeared in the English medical journal Lancet and were greeted with interest by specialists. It was only after his retirement that Van Lommel decided to summarize the results and began work on the book. The voluminous work, Consciousness Beyond Life, The Science of Near-Death Experience, was first published in the Netherlands and then translated into other languages. The work refutes the claim that consciousness stops at the moment when the heart and brain stop working. Most of the patient's near-death memories were recorded within 5 to 10 minutes, when the electroencephalogram and heart monitor showed no signs of life. The cardiologist notes that the return to life later than 12 minutes after the death of the physical body has not been recorded. And not everyone who has suffered clinical death experiences post-mortem experiences or does not retain memories of them. Using the materialistic term, consciousness, Van Lommel notes that it exists independently of indications of brain activity. In other words, a person's soul can live after physical death. At the same time, the Dutch patients surveyed noted the same events and experiences as people from other countries. Exit from the physical body. A feeling of happiness and peace. White light around or an image of a tunnel. Pictures of a life lived. Meetings with previously deceased loved ones or the appearance of higher beings. Unlike other researchers, Dr. Van Lommel draws the following conclusion. The human brain is not the source of his consciousness. It is simply transmitted through brain cells from an open universe, like through a radio receiver. Therefore, when brain death is recorded, the soul does not die, but seeks new ways to communicate with the outside world. A cardiologist from the Netherlands introduced the concept of non-local consciousness. He justifies this with concepts from quantum physics. but we will try to explain it more simply. The soul is not the essence of a certain human body. She lives in the entire surrounding space, not limited to a given time and space. This is how van Lommel explains near-death experiences, post-hypnotic discoveries, and the effect of reincarnation. If the death of the body is not the end of life, but only marks the transition to a new state, then this gives the right to talk about the infinity of existence of each individual. We still pay inexcusably little attention to these facts, and they require close study from different points of view. Of the many real-life stories described in van Lommel's book, there are a couple of interesting cases. During clinical death, a blind woman saw and was able to describe the operating room, the appearance of the doctors, and their actions. Her recollections were confirmed by all the doctors present. This case cannot be attributed to the effect of medications or the increased suggestibility of the patient, since her blindness after returning to life was confirmed by ophthalmologists. During the resuscitation of an elderly man, the nurse had to remove his denture from his mouth in order to insert the tubes of the ventilator. When the patient came back to life and was transferred to the intensive care unit, it turned out that his teeth had been lost. They couldn't be found. What was the surprise of the doctors when the man who suffered clinical death told who took out his prosthesis and where he subsequently put it. He saw it from above and remembered it well. Cardiologist van Lommel is used to seeing the fear of death in his patients. But those who survived cardiac arrest later assured that death was not scary and tried to convey their faith to others. All the stories told today are true and documented. We can take into account the opinions of doctors from different countries, that at the moment of death of our mortal body, the door to a new world will be opened to us. There is no pain and fear. All earthly problems and sorrows will end there. Approximately 10 million Americans who have experienced clinical death and retained near-death memories of it know this for sure. They are all now convinced that death is not the end of human life. After all, the soul remains alive and finds a new home full of warmth, light, and love. Do you think there is life after death? Write your opinion in the comments. If you want to learn more about life after death and the afterlife, then I recommend watching my other videos. Please don't forget to like this video if you liked it. See you soon and have a nice day.